Picture this. You're walking down a crowded street, and suddenly someone you've never met just disappears. Not dies, not moves away, just vanishes into thin air while people are watching. No body, no funeral, no grave, just gone. Now imagine that person lived 365 years before they disappeared. And imagine it happened when there were giants walking the earth, when angels were having children with humans, and when magic wasn't just in fairy tales. Welcome to the story of Enoch, the man who broke the most fundamental rule of human existence. He never died. Hey everyone, before we dive deep into this incredible mystery, hit that subscribe button if you want more mind-blowing biblical stories that will keep you up at night, wondering what's really true. And drop a comment letting me know. Have you ever heard of someone just disappearing without a trace? I'm curious about your thoughts. Now, here's what makes Enoch's story absolutely wild. The Bible mentions thousands of people. Kings, prophets, warriors, ordinary folks. And you know what they all have in common? The same thing that connects every human who ever lived. They died. Abraham died. Moses died. King David died. Even Jesus died before he came back to life. But when the Bible talks about Enoch, it says something that appears nowhere else in human history. Enoch walked with God, and then he was no more, because God took him away. No death, no funeral, just gone. But here's where it gets really mysterious. This isn't some random guy the Bible mentions once and forgets. Enoch was the seventh from Adam. And if you know anything about biblical numbers, 7 isn't just counting. It's God's signature. 7 days of creation, 7 notes in music, 7 colors in a rainbow. When God uses 7, something big is happening. And Enoch? He was the completion, the perfect number, the one chosen to bridge heaven and earth in a way no one had done since Adam walked with God in the Garden of Eden. Think about this. What would it take for someone to just walk away from death? What kind of life would you have to live? What kind of relationship with the divine would be so close, so perfect, that death itself would say, dangerous, too strange, too wild for ordinary believers? For over 1,000 years they were lost to the Western world. But what if those books contained secrets that powerful people didn't want ordinary folks to know? Now here's something that will make you think. Why would someone who never died need to write books about judgment and the end times? Unless he knew something was coming, something so big, so terrible, that even a man who walked with God needed to warn the world. The ancient texts say Enoch saw the future. He saw the flood that would destroy his world. He saw giants falling from grace. He saw angels being judged for rebellion. He saw the end of everything. And then he saw what comes after. But there's something else, something the church historians don't like to talk about. What if Enoch didn't just disappear into the past? What if he's still out there, still walking, still watching, still waiting? Some people believe he'll return at the end of days. Others think he never left, that he's been moving through human history, invisible to most, but occasionally glimpsed by those who know how to look. Think about it. If someone could walk right out of death 5,000 years ago, who's to say they stopped walking? Coming up, we're going to explore the world Enoch lived in, a place so strange and supernatural that it makes our wildest science fiction look tame. We'll discover why angels left heaven to live on earth, how their children became giants who ruled the world, and why everything was about to be destroyed in the greatest catastrophe in human history. But first, I want to ask you something. If you could walk with God the way Enoch did, would you, even if it meant leaving everything you know behind, even if it meant stepping out of normal human life forever? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if this story is making you think about life and death in a new way, hit that like button. Trust me, we're just getting started. Before we understand Enoch, we need to understand the world he lived in. And I'm telling you, it was nothing like. Without the humility that comes from fighting for each day, humanity grew proud, arrogant. They started seeing themselves as gods. Now, make sure you're subscribed, because what I'm about to tell you will blow your mind. The boundary between heaven and earth was different back then. Spiritual beings could move freely in the physical world. Angels walked among humans like neighbors dropping by for dinner. These weren't your typical Sunday school angels with little wings and harps. These were the Watchers, powerful beings assigned by God to observe and guard humanity. They were supposed to watch from a distance, to serve as protectors without interfering. But they had been watching for centuries, and what they saw changed everything. The daughters of men were beautiful. Their voices were like music. Their forms were pleasing to the eye. And slowly, desire began to stir in hearts that were never meant to feel such things. It started with whispers in the celestial courts, secret meetings in the shadows of heaven, a growing conspiracy among beings who had once been pillars of righteousness. Why should they be bound by laws that kept them from what they desired? Why should they serve when they could rule? Why should they watch when they could participate? 200 angels listened to these words. 200 sons of God who had grown weary of their station. 200 beings of light who were about to choose darkness. They made a pact on Mount Hermon, a covenant sealed with oaths that bound them to their chosen path. They would descend to earth together. They would take wives from among the daughters of men. They would rule as kings over the children of Adam. The descent was magnificent and terrible. Like falling stars they came, trailing fire across the sky. The very fabric of reality rippled at their passing. These fallen angels didn't arrive as monsters. They appeared with perfect beauty. Faces like lightning, bodies like bronze, voices like the sound of many waters. To the daughters of men, they were irresistible. But here's where the story gets really controversial. And this is something that makes a lot of people uncomfortable. These unions between angels and humans produced children to make swords and shields. Another revealed the signs of the stars. A third instructed them in the use of roots and herbs, both for healing and for harm. Each piece of forbidden knowledge was like poison poured into the well of human wisdom. What should have been discovered slowly, through generations of careful learning, was given all at once. The natural order was shattered. Humanity began to see itself as equal to God. They forgot their place as creatures and began to act as creators. But they used their newfound power not for good, but for domination, for corruption, for satisfying their darkest desires. And the earth itself? The earth began to groan under the weight of this rebellion. Animals became violent. Plants grew thorns. The very ground seemed to cry out against the corruption that walked upon it. Violence spread like a plague. This was the world into which Enoch was born, a world where the impossible was commonplace, where angels walked the earth and giants ruled the cities, where humanity stood at the crossroads between divinity and damnation. Think about this for a moment. If you lived in a world like that, would you choose the path of the majority? Would you follow the crowd toward corruption and power? Or would you dare to walk a different path, even if it meant standing alone? Because that's exactly what Enoch chose to do. Coming up next, we're going to discover how a baby born into this chaotic world would grow up to be the one person who could stand against giants without fear, speak truth to fallen angels, and ultimately walk right out of death itself. But I have to ask, what do you think happened to that ancient knowledge? Do you think it's really lost forever? Or might some of it still be hidden away, waiting for the right time to resurface? Let me know what you think in the comments below. The labor began at sunset, and immediately, everyone knew this birth was different. Jared, Enoch's father, paced outside the tent while his wife cried out within. The midwives whispered among themselves. They had delivered hundreds of babies, but they had never seen anything like this. The air seemed to hold its breath. Above them, the stars wheeled in their courses, the same stars that had watched over Adam's first steps in the garden, the same stars that would one day guide wise men to a stable and bear it into their hearts. Now, if you're enjoying this story, take a second to hit that like button. And I'm curious, have you ever felt like someone in your life was marked for something special from the moment they were born? Tell me about it in the comments. In the days that followed Enoch's birth, strange things began to happen. Animals gathered around their tent, as if drawn by an invisible force. Birds sang at unusual hours. Flowers bloomed out of season. The very earth seemed to celebrate the child's arrival. The old women whispered among themselves. They had seen many births, but never one like this. There was something in the child's eyes, a depth that seemed to look beyond the visible world, a knowing that went far beyond his years. But here's what's really incredible about Enoch's childhood. He grew up in the shadow of giants. Picture this. You're 7 years old, playing outside, when you see something that makes your blood run cold. A creature 30 feet tall, with muscles like twisted oak and eyes that burn with unholy fire, approaches you. Most children would run screaming. Most adults would faint with terror. But when 7-year-old Enoch first encountered a Nephilim, he stood perfectly still and stared right back. The giant noticed the child's unusual calm. Most humans cowered or fled when they met the offspring of the fallen angels. But this small one showed no fear, only curiosity, only a strange kind of recognition. "What are you, little one?" the giant asked, its voice like thunder rolling across mountains. "I am Enoch," the boy replied simply. "I am the 7th from Adam." The giant's eyes widened. Even the Nephilim knew the significance of that number. Even they understood that 7 meant completion, divine purpose, the fullness of time. This was the world of Enoch's childhood, a realm where the impossible was commonplace, where beings of myth and legend walked the earth as casually as neighbors. But here's what sets Enoch apart from everyone else in human history. While other children lived in fear of these supernatural beings, Enoch learned to navigate their world with wisdom far beyond his years. He understood instinctively. Remarkable. Enoch rejected every offer. He saw through their lies. He recognized their corruption. He understood that what they offered wasn't freedom, but a different kind of slavery, a bondage that would last beyond the boundaries of time itself. Think about this for a moment. We're talking about a child, a boy, who had the spiritual discernment to resist beings that had successfully corrupted entire civilizations. What does that tell you about who Enoch really was? The boy's refusal enraged the Watchers. They had never encountered a human who could resist their temptations. They had never met a child who could see through their deceptions. They began to plot his destruction. But heaven was watching too. Angels of God surrounded the boy with invisible protection. They whispered warnings in his ear. They guided his steps away from danger. They were preparing him for battles that lay ahead. As Enoch grew older, his gifts became more pronounced. He could see into the spiritual realm as clearly as he could see the physical world. He could communicate with angels. He could sense the presence of God in ways that amazed even the most faithful among his people. The giants began to fear him, not because of his physical strength. He was just an ordinary man in that regard. Not because of his political power. He had none. But because of his spiritual authority. Because of the light that shone from within him. Because of the voice that would soon speak through him. Here's something that will make you think. If Enoch could resist the temptations of fallen angels as a child, what does that say about the choices we make every day? What does it say about the power we have to choose good over evil, light over darkness? Coming up, we're going to discover how this boy who stood fearless before giants would grow into the man who would speak words that would shake heaven itself, challenge the most powerful beings in creation, and ultimately walk right out of this world into the next. But first, I want to ask you something. Do you think some people are born with a special calling? Do you believe in destiny? Or do you think we all have the potential to walk with God the way Enoch did? Share your thoughts below. I read every comment and love hearing your perspectives. When Enoch turned 15, when suddenly he found himself standing in a vast throne room made of crystal and fire. Before him rose a throne that defied description. It wasn't made of any earthly material. It seemed to be carved from light itself, from pure being, from the very essence of existence. And upon it sat a figure whose face was too bright to look at directly. Around the throne stood beings of incredible beauty. Their wings covered their faces in reverence. Their voices sang harmonies that made the music of earth sound like children babbling. "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty," they sang, "who was and is to come." The young man fell to his knees, overwhelmed by the majesty of what he was seeing. He understood without being told that he was standing in the very presence of the Creator, the one who had spoken the worlds into existence, the one who had walked with Adam in the garden. Then the voice spoke, not audibly, but directly into his heart, into his mind, into the very center of his being. "Enoch," the voice said, "seventh from Adam, you have been chosen." "Chosen for what, Lord?" the young man asked. "To walk between worlds, to stand in the gap, to carry my words to a generation that has forgotten my voice." Now, if this story is making you think about your own calling in life, smash that like button and let me know in the comments, have you ever felt chosen for something bigger than yourself? From that moment on, Enoch's life was never the same. The visions came more frequently. Sometimes he saw the past, the creation of the world, the fall of Adam, the corruption of the earth, the descent of the Watchers, the birth of the Nephilim. Sometimes he saw the future, the coming flood, the judgment of the giants, the preservation of the righteous, the renewal of the earth. But most often he saw the present, the spiritual realm that existed alongside the physical world, the angels of God moving among men, the demons whispering their temptations, the cosmic battle between good and evil that raged unseen around every human heart. He learned to recognize the violence. The ways of righteousness have been forgotten. The children of men have chosen corruption over truth. But the Lord is not blind. He sees all, he knows all, and his patience has an end. The crowd that gathered around him was unlike any congregation that would be seen in later ages. Giants stood among men. The Nephilim towered over ordinary humans. Some of the fallen Watchers themselves had taken human form and walked among the people. But something in Enoch's voice commanded attention. Even the mightiest of the Nephilim found themselves listening. Even the fallen angels felt compelled to hear what this small man had to say. There was authority in his words, power in his presence, something that demanded respect. "You think yourselves gods," Enoch continued, his eyes scanning the crowd. "You who tower above the children of Adam, you who work miracles and claim dominion over the earth. But you are not gods. You are rebels. You are fallen ones. You are under judgment." A murmur ran through the crowd. No one had ever spoken to the Nephilim this way. No human had ever dared to challenge the sons of the Watchers. But Enoch showed no fear. If anything, his voice grew stronger. "The flood is coming," he declared. "The windows of heaven will open. The fountains of the great deep will break up. Every living thing that breathes air will perish from the earth. Only those who walk with God will be saved." Now, here's what's absolutely mind-blowing about this moment. Enoch wasn't just preaching to humans. He was speaking directly to the supernatural beings who ruled his world, and they were listening. Some of the giants laughed. Some of the fallen angels sneered. But others began to look uncomfortable because deep down they knew he was telling the truth. They had rebelled against heaven. They had corrupted the earth. They had violated the cosmic order, and cosmic violations have cosmic consequences. Day after day, Enoch returned to the marketplaces, to the city gates, to wherever people would listen. His message never changed. Repent. Turn back to God. Judgment is coming. A world where speaking truth could get you destroyed by supernatural beings. Would you still speak it? What would it take for you to stand up to giants? Think about it, and let me know in the comments below. The call came on a morning when the sky was red as blood. Enoch woke to find an angel standing at the foot of his bed. Not one of the fallen watchers, but a being of pure light whose presence filled the room with peace. "Rise, Enoch," the angel said. "The Lord has heard the cry of the earth. The corruption has reached unto heaven. The time has come for judgment to be declared." Enoch stood, though his knees trembled. He was 25 years old, but he felt the weight of eternity pressing down upon his shoulders. "What would you have me do?" he asked. "Speak," the angel replied. "Proclaim the word of the Lord to this generation. Warn the righteous. Rebuke the wicked. Stand as a witness against the corruption that defiles the earth." But then the angel said something that changed everything. "You will not speak only to men, Enoch. You will carry God's message to the watchers themselves. You will stand before the fallen angels and pronounce judgment upon their rebellion." Think about that for a moment. God was asking a human being to confront the most powerful supernatural entities in existence. Beings who had corrupted entire civilizations. Angels who had abandoned heaven itself for earthly pleasures. If you're thinking this sounds terrifying, hit that subscribe button, because what happens next will blow your mind. The confrontation took place on Mount Hermon, the same mountain where the 200 watchers had made their pact to rebel against God. Enoch climbed the mountain alone. As he reached the summit, the air itself seemed to tremble. One by one, the fallen angels appeared around him. Beings of terrible beauty, faces like lightning, bodies like polished bronze, eyes that burned with the fire of rebellion. At their head stood Semjaza, the leader of the conspiracy. The angel who had first dared to suggest that the sons of God could take the daughters of men as wives. "So," Semjaza said, his voice like thunder rolling across the peaks, "the little prophet comes to us. What message does the Creator send through a mere mortal?" Enoch looked around at the circle of fallen. "You will have no forgiveness. Your children, the Nephilim, will fall by the sword. They will destroy each other in their lust for power. And you will be bound in the valleys of the earth until the day of judgment." Now here's where the story gets absolutely incredible. Azazel, one of the most powerful of the fallen angels, stepped forward. He was the one who had taught humans the arts of war, the one who had shown them how to make weapons and wage battle. "And what of you, little prophet?" Azazel sneered. Do you think your God will protect you from us forever? Do you think your mortality makes you untouchable? But Enoch didn't flinch. Instead, he did something that no human had ever done before. He looked directly into the eyes of a fallen angel and smiled. "I am not untouchable because I am mortal," he said. "I am untouchable because I walk with God, and those who walk with God cannot be harmed by those who have turned away from him." The silence that followed was deafening. For the first time since their rebellion began, the fallen angels felt something they hadn't experienced in centuries. Fear. Not fear of punishment. They had known that was coming, but fear of something else. Fear of the power that flowed through this simple human. Fear of the light that shone from within him. Fear of the authority he carried. Because in that moment, they realized something terrifying. Enoch wasn't just speaking for God. He was speaking as one who had access to God in a way they had lost forever. They were fallen angels, but he was a man who walked with the Creator, and that made him more powerful than any of them. But the confrontation wasn't over. Semjaza raised his hand, and Enoch felt the weight of supernatural power pressing down on him. The fallen angel was trying to crush him with pure spiritual force. For a moment, the pressure was overwhelming. Enoch's knees buckled, his vision blurred. He felt as if the very atoms of his body were being torn apart. But then something else happened. A presence surrounded him, a light brighter than the sun, a power greater than all the fallen angels combined. And Enoch stood up. "Your time is finished," he said, his voice now echoing with divine authority.
Knew perfect love and chose perfect rebellion.
Think about this. What would it be like to carry messages between heaven and hell? To be the one voice that could speak to both God and his enemies? Coming up, we're going to discover the secrets Enoch learned as he walked between worlds. We'll explore the hidden knowledge he gained, the cosmic mysteries he unveiled, and the books he wrote that were considered too dangerous for ordinary people to read. But I want to ask you something. Do you think there are still people today who can walk between worlds? People who can stand in the gap between heaven and earth? Let me know what you think in the comments below. After his confrontation with the fallen angels, something changed in Enoch's relationship with the divine realm. The visions came more frequently now, but they weren't just glimpses anymore. They were full journeys. Enoch would find himself transported bodily through dimensions that exist beyond our physical reality. The first journey happened while he was praying, alone in the wilderness. One moment he was kneeling on rocky ground under the desert stars. The next moment, he was standing on a floor made of crystal and fire, surrounded by creatures so magnificent that human language has no words to describe them. "Welcome, Enoch," a voice said behind him. He turned to see an angel whose appearance was like polished copper mixed with light. "You have been summoned to see what no mortal eye has ever beheld." And so began Enoch's tours through the hidden places of creation. Now, before we go deeper into this incredible journey, make sure you're subscribed, because what you're about to hear will change how you think about reality itself. And if you're wondering whether any of this could actually be true, drop a comment. I love hearing your thoughts. The angel led Enoch through chambers that defied the laws of physics, halls that stretched beyond the horizon, rooms where time moved differently, where past and future existed simultaneously. "This is the treasury of the snow," the angel explained as they passed through a chamber filled with swirling white crystals. "Every snowflake that has ever fallen, or ever will fall, is stored here until its appointed time." They moved through the treasury of the hail, the storehouse of the winds, the chambers where lightning is forged and thunder is shaped. But the most incredible sight were
Shelves upon shelves of books, scrolls, tablets,
every possible form of written knowledge. "These are the books of life," the angel told him. "The record of every soul that has ever lived or ever will live. Every choice made, every word spoken, every thought conceived." Enoch walked among the shelves in wonder.
He saw his own book, the record of his life from birth to that very moment. But he also saw something else. Books that were still being written. Records of people not yet born. The complete history of humanity, from beginning to end. "You want to know why you were chosen," the angel said, watching Enoch's expression. "Look here." He led Enoch to a section of the library that seemed somehow different from the rest. The books here glowed with their own inner light. "These are the books of those who walk with God," the angel explained. "Not many volumes, as you can see. From all of human history, only a few have achieved this level of communion with the Creator." Enoch saw Adam's book, blazing like a star. He saw the books of others he didn't recognize, names and faces from future generations who would also learn to walk between worlds. And then the angel showed him something that took his breath away. "This is why you were chosen, Enoch. Not just to walk with God yourself, but to show others that it's possible. Your book will be read by generations yet unborn. Your story will inspire countless souls to seek the divine connection that most believe is impossible." But the angel wasn't finished. "There is something else you must see," he said, leading Enoch to the very center of the Hall of Records. The book that explains everything. In the center of the hall stood a single pedestal. Upon it rested a book unlike any other, not made of paper or parchment, but of light itself. The pages turned themselves, revealing words that rewrote themselves even as Enoch watched. "This is the Book of Destiny," the angel explained. "The complete plan of the Creator from beginning to end. Every age of history, every rising and falling of nations, every birth and death, every just disappear into the past, but stepped outside of time itself. What if he's been moving through history, watching and waiting for his final role in God's plan?" The angel led Enoch through many more chambers, the treasury of souls, the forge where stars are made, the garden where the tree of life still grows. But it was the final chamber that left the deepest impression. "This," the angel said, opening a door that led to a room filled with writing desks and scribal tools, "is where you will work." "Work?" Enoch asked. "Did you think your journeys through heaven were just for your own education?" The angel smiled. "You have been chosen to be heaven's scribe. You will write down what you have seen. You will record the visions you receive. You will create books that will preserve God's truth for generations yet unborn." And so Enoch began his most important work, not just walking with God, but writing down the secrets of creation for a world that was about to forget everything. Coming up, we're going to discover what happened on the most important day in human history, the day Enoch walked out of this world and into the next. But first, we'll explore the mysterious books he wrote and why powerful people tried to destroy them. What do you think happened to Enoch's lost writings? Do you think they're still hidden somewhere, waiting to be discovered? The morning of Enoch's translation started like any other day. He woke before dawn, as was his custom, and walked out into the fields to pray. The mist was rising from the ground, watering the earth as it had every morning since creation. The stars were fading as the eastern sky began to lighten. But something was different. The air itself seemed to vibrate with anticipation. Enoch had been having dreams for weeks, not the usual visions of heavenly realms, but something more personal, something that felt like preparation for a journey. He was 365 years old. By the standards of his time, he was still in the prime of life. Most men of his generation lived well past 900 years. He had centuries ahead of him, or so everyone thought. But Enoch had been getting a different message from heaven. His work on earth was complete. This wasn't his usual morning walk through the fields. With each step, he felt himself growing lighter. Not physically lighter, but spiritually lighter. As if the weight of mortality was slowly lifting from his shoulders. He walked toward the hills where he often went to be alone with God. But as he climbed higher, something extraordinary began to happen. The landscape around him started to change. The ordinary rocks and trees began to shimmer with an inner light. The very air seemed to become more pure, more refined. Colors became more vivid. Sounds became more musical. He was still walking on the same path he had walked thousands of times before, but somehow he was also walking into another dimension. With each step, the physical world became more transparent. The spiritual world became more solid. And then he saw them. Angels. Not in vision, not in dream, but standing right there on the path ahead of him. Beings of incredible beauty and power, waiting to escort him on the final leg of his journey. "Enoch," the lead angel said, "the Father is waiting." "But what about my family?" Enoch asked. "What about my son, Methuselah? What about the people who depend on my teaching?" "Your family will understand," the angel replied. "Your son will carry on your work, and your teaching will live forever in the books you have written." Enoch nodded. He had known this day would come, had been preparing for it. But knowing something and experiencing it are very different things. He thought about his wife who had supported him through years of visions and prophecies. He thought about his children who had grown up hearing stories of angels and journeys to heaven. He thought about the faithful few who had listened to his preaching and chosen to walk with God. But most of all, he thought about his calling. For 300 years, he had walked with God in a way that bridged heaven and earth. He had spoken to angels and confronted demons. He had seen the throne of the Almighty and carried messages between worlds. Now it was time for the ultimate bridge crossing. The angels began to walk with him. Enoch took a step forward, then another. With each step, he felt himself becoming more real, more alive, more himself than he had ever been. The last thing he remembered of Earth was the feeling of his feet leaving the ground. Not floating, not flying, but simply stepping from one realm into another, as naturally as walking from one room to the next. And then he was gone. Not dead, not disappeared, translated, transformed, taken. His family found his footprints leading up the hill. They found the place where he had knelt in prayer, but they never found him, because death had no claim on the man who walked with God. For the first time since Adam's fall, a human being had stepped back into the full presence of the Creator while still alive. The broken connection had been restored. The walk was complete. But here's the most incredible part of this story. According to the ancient texts, Enoch's translation wasn't just about him. It was a demonstration, a proof of concept, a preview of what's possible for humanity. Coming up, we're going to explore the mysterious books Enoch left behind and why they were considered too dangerous for ordinary people to read. We'll discover what happened to these writings and why some people believe they contain secrets that could change the world. But I have to ask you, do you think it's still possible for people to walk with God the way Enoch did? Or was he unique in history? Share your thoughts below. This is where the conversation gets really interesting. When Enoch disappeared from the earth, he left behind something that would cause controversy for thousands of years. Books. Detailed writings describing his journeys through heaven, his conversations with angels, and his visions of the future. These weren't just religious texts. They were instruction manuals for walking with God, step-by-step guides for achieving the kind of divine connection that Enoch had experienced. And that made them incredibly dangerous to certain people in power. The Book of Enoch was unlike anything in the biblical canon.
It told stories that the Bible only hinted at. It filled in gaps that left people wondering. It provided details that made the supernatural seem real and accessible. Early Christians treasured this book. The Apostle Jude quoted from it directly in his letter. Church fathers like Clement of Alexandria and Tertullian treated it as scripture. For the first few
This gets really interesting. The problem with Enoch's books wasn't their theology, it was their accessibility. They didn't just say, God is great and mysterious. They said, here's how to see God for yourself. Here's how to walk with angels. Here's how to receive visions and prophecies. That's the kind of information that makes religious hierarchies nervous. Think about it. If everyone can walk with God directly, what do you need priests for? If anyone can receive divine revelation, what makes church authorities special? If ordinary people can access heavenly secrets, how do you control the flow of spiritual information? The answer is simple. You make the instruction manuals disappear. By the 4th century, church councils began declaring Enoch's writings apocryphal, meaning hidden or secret. They removed them from the official biblical canon. They discouraged people from reading them. They labeled them as dangerous, heretical, or fraudulent. For over 1,000 years, the Book of Enoch was lost to the Western world. But here's what the church leaders didn't count on: the Ethiopian church. Hidden away in the mountains of Africa, beyond the reach of Roman authority, Ethiopian Christians preserved what everyone else had abandoned. They kept Enoch's books not as curiosities, but as living scripture. They still read them today. They still study them. They still believe that Enoch's instructions for walking with God are just as valid now as they were 5,000 years ago. The Western world didn't rediscover the Book of Enoch until 1773, when a Scottish explorer named James Bruce brought copies back from Ethiopia. When scholars finally got their hands on these long-lost texts, they were shocked by what they found. Detailed descriptions of the fallen angels and their rebellion, explicit accounts of how the Nephilim corrupted the earth, prophecies about the end times that seemed to predict events still in the future. But most shocking of all were the technical details. Enoch described the movements of the stars with astronomical precision. He provided calendars that matched modern calculations. He gave measurements of the earth and heavens that wouldn't be verified until the space age. How could a man who lived before the flood know things that modern science had only recently revolutionized our understanding of reality? Because here's something most people don't know. Enoch wasn't the only ancient figure who supposedly wrote books that later disappeared. There are references to lost writings by Adam, Seth, Noah, Abraham, and others. Books that describe direct encounters with the divine. Texts that provided blueprints for spiritual transformation. What happened to all those books? Some people believe they're still out there, hidden in secret libraries, underground vaults, or remote monasteries, waiting for the right time to be revealed. Others think they've been deliberately destroyed by people who didn't want ordinary humans to have access to such powerful knowledge. But here's the most intriguing possibility. What if some of these texts are starting to resurface? In 1947, the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered in caves near Qumran. Among them were fragments of the Book of Enoch, proving that it was being read and copied right up until the time of Christ. In 1945, the Nag Hammadi Library was found in Egypt, containing dozens of early Christian texts that had been banned by the church. In recent years, there have been reports of other discoveries. Ancient libraries found in hidden chambers, manuscripts recovered from forgotten ruins, texts that claim to contain the lost wisdom of the ancients. The question is, are we living in a time when these hidden books are meant to be revealed? Are we approaching an age when the secrets of walking with God will once again be available to ordinary people? And if so, what does that mean for our world? Coming up, we're going to explore the most controversial question of all. What if Enoch didn't just disappear into history? What if he's still out there somewhere? Still walking between worlds? Still carrying out his mission as heaven's messenger? But first, I want to ask you, do you think there are spiritual truths that have been hidden from us? Do you believe that ordinary people can have extraordinary encounters with the divine? And what would you do if you discovered that walking with God wasn't just a metaphor, but an actual possibility? Let me know in the comments, because what we're going to discuss next might change everything you thought.
Prayers. What if Enoch is one of them? Islamic tradition describes Al-Qidr, the green man who appears to travelers in distress, provides guidance to the lost, and vanishes before he can be thanked. Could this be Enoch in disguise? Christian mystics have written about encounters with a mysterious figure who appears at moments of crisis, speaks words of wisdom, and disappears without a trace. They call him the Wandering Saint. Now, before you dismiss this as fantasy, let me share something that will make you think twice. Make sure you're subscribed, because what I'm about to tell you is documented history that most people have never heard. Throughout the centuries, there have been credible reports of encounters with a man who fits Enoch's description perfectly. In medieval Europe, chroniclers wrote about a mysterious figure who appeared during plagues and disasters. He would walk through affected areas, healing the sick and comforting the dying. When people asked his name, he would simply say, "I am one who walks with God." During the Black Death, multiple witnesses reported seeing a tall man with an otherworldly presence, moving through the most infected areas without ever getting sick. He would touch people and they would recover. He would speak words of comfort that seemed to come from heaven itself. The strange thing? Every description matched. The same face, the same bearing, the same eyes that seemed to look beyond the physical world. In 1692, during the Salem witch trials, court records mention a mysterious stranger who appeared in the jail where accused witches were being held. He spoke to each prisoner individually, and many of them recanted their confessions of witchcraft, claiming they had been deceived by evil spirits. The guards described him as a man of middle years with an ageless quality about him. When they tried to question him about his identity, he simply said, "I speak only truth in a world full of lies." By morning, he was gone. The cell was still locked. No one saw him leave. During World War I, soldiers on both sides of the trenches reported encounters with a figure they called the Angel of Mons. He would appear during the worst battles, moving between the lines, comforting the wounded, praying over the dying. Military records describe him as a civilian who somehow had access to restrict. Entering the cave, he encountered an old man who seemed to be waiting for him. The man pointed to the cave and said, "The time has come for these words to be revealed again." When the shepherd turned around to ask what he meant, the man was gone. In 1945, when the Nag Hammadi library was discovered in Egypt, the farmer who found the buried jar reported a similar encounter. A stranger appeared just as he was about to give up his search, pointed to the exact spot where the manuscripts were buried, and disappeared. These aren't isolated incidents. Throughout history, whenever lost spiritual texts have been rediscovered, there are reports of a mysterious guide who appears just long enough to point people in the right direction. What if this is Enoch's continuing mission? What if he was chosen not just to walk with God in his own time, but to be God's messenger throughout all of human history? Think about his qualifications. He lived before the flood, so he remembers the original world. He walked with God, so he has divine authority. He was translated rather than dying, so he exists outside normal time. If you needed someone to guide humanity through its darkest moments, who better than a man who has already walked between heaven and earth? But there's something else. Something that might explain why Enoch sightings seem to be increasing in recent years. According to ancient prophecies, Enoch will play a crucial role in the end times, not just as a witness, but as an active participant in the final events of human history.
The Book of Revelation mentions 2 witnesses who will prophesy for 1,260 days during the tribulation period. Many scholars believe one of these witnesses will be Enoch, the man who never died, returning to complete his mission. What if the increase in Enoch sightings means we're approaching that time? What if he's preparing for his final role in God's plan? And here's something that will really make you think. What if some of the people you encounter in your daily life aren't quite what they seem? What if that stranger who gave you directions when you were lost was more than just a helpful passerby? What if that person who sat next to you during your darkest moment and spoke exactly the words you needed to hear wasn't there by coincidence? What if Enoch is still walking among us, still carrying out his mission?
Something he would have for our world today? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and if this story has opened your mind to possibilities you never considered before, hit that like button and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes, the most incredible truths are hidden in the stories we think we already know. Thanks for joining me on this journey through one of the most mysterious stories in human history. Until next time, keep walking, keep searching, and keep wondering about the thin places where heaven touches earth. Maybe you'll be the next person to encounter the man who walked with God.